As Above, So Below is a fascinating film, even if you go into it just for a fun time. The movie is balanced between the horror and adventure genres and has an overall hopeful and happy ending. A lot of the reviews will discuss the similarities that the story has to Dante's Inferno, which are definitely present and a fun way to watch the movie. But by not diving further in, I think one could actually miss the main themes of this story.
The only way out is down.
Besides, Dante studied Hermeticism, so a lot of the imagery in Inferno and the Divine Comedy are inspired by esoteric and Hermetic concepts that we can really dig into. Something I have been studying as of late is ancient symbols and how those symbols evolve. Behind every modern symbol is an archaic one, and behind every story is a pattern of symbols that have always existed in human history, and perhaps even before. If you wish to understand the meaning of something, you have to peel back the mask to see what lies underneath. But if you're a nerd like me, you also know that there are an endless amount of layers to uncover. For example, beginning with the phrase, as above, so below, might take to studies of the occult, which will then take you to other esoteric practices and philosophies, such as Freemasonry or Hermeticism, which might then take you down the road to the Kabbalah and the mysticism of the Hellenistic period. Behind everything is something else. And you find yourself digging deeper into an infinite hole where each layer provides more understanding, but you know that you'll never understand it all because it's simply too much for one person to fully know. Okay, let's backtrack a bit. As Above, So Below is a paraphrase that comes from Hermetic philosophy or Hermeticism. Hermeticism is related to both Gnosticism and early Christianity and rose out of a time and place in history where humans were developing beliefs that held onto mystical and supernatural notions while also believing that science and rationality were not at odds with the former. These beliefs and practices eventually blend in with modern New Age spiritualism and modern occult practices such as tarot card readings. A different sort of branch also influenced Freemasonry and other so-called secret societies. At the heart of this belief system, however, is the balance between the seen and unseen, the natural and the magical, faith and reason, and is perhaps best summarized in the phrase of as above, so below. According to common interpretation, this phrase refers to the macrocosm and the microcosm, two worlds that reflect one another. And you can find truth by comparing these two things, both theoretically and scientifically. In historical summary, Hermeticism, whether practical or theoretical, magical or philosophical, can be understood as responses to the same very complex Greco-Egyptian culture of the Ptolemaic, Roman, and early Christian times. This belief system developed out of a conflict of ideals as well as a need to resolve that conflict. Hermes Trismegistus is credited with writing the Hermetica and providing the basic teachings that make up Hermeticism. Many authors would have written under this pseudonym. In fact, there were likely 30,000 books written under this name. The author is an archetype that is a mixture between the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth, both of which were truth seekers and messengers. And Trismegistus means thrice great, which can be paralleled with the ideas of the Holy Trinity that came about around the same time period. So the originator of Hermeticism is an archetype of all truth seekers, and although many of the works of Hermes have been lost to time, the modern Hermetica provides a basic understanding of their beliefs and practices. According to Joseph Campbell, Hermes is the lord of the road to rebirth. He is the one who meets the soul at death and guides the path to eternal life of one kind or another. And that way, he is the lord also of roads, the protector of travelers. These are his hitherworld functions. And in the journey to discover one's true self, roads represent the path to that truth. As Hermes is a truth seeker himself, so is he a protector of those seeking truth. Everything in the field of time is dual. Hermes reveals the truth to the truth seekers, that beyond pairs of opposites, beyond the duality, there is God. Now let's discuss the basic setup of the film. Scarlet is an appropriate name since it is of French origin and means passionate and fiery. But George, a name of Greek origin, also seems purposeful, as it means farmer or earth worker. You'll see more of this meaning explored in the Bridgerton spin-off, Queen Charlotte. But in this story, George is someone who fixes things, a cultivator, and someone who brings things back to life.
Hearing their church bells ring for the first time in 284 years.
The two of them together balance reason and faith. George being the realist, the skeptic, contrasted to Scarlett's strong beliefs in the supernatural. Both of them are truth seekers and are thus protected by Hermes in the realm of the alchemical journey. And although most of the story takes place in the Parisian catacombs, Scarlett starts her journey in Iran, where the bull would have represented the moon, spring, and sacrifice. This ancient symbol, which is indeed of Iranian mythological origins, is opposite of the lion, which represents the sun. The bull signals the beginning of a journey into darkness, a period of growth, and a time to let things go. To Scarlett, the bull is the key to the next part of her journey. But the truth of the symbol of the bull is what really kickstarts this journey. When she dives into the caves, Scarlett believes she is on the journey to finding the Philosopher's Stone. But what she doesn't yet realize is that she is seeking her own divine power.
That's where I would put it.
Right. Of course you would.
I also want to note that George calls Scarlett a lunatic, a word which is derived from lunaticus, or of the moon. This gives more meaning to Scarlett being the lunar foil to George's solar. While Scarlett started her journey in the darkness, George started his in the light, in a tower of a church. He is the sun and she is the moon. She is the dark and he is the light.
I don't go underground, remember?
Yes.
And thus begins our as above, so below symbolism. When the moon visits the sun at the highest point, a place of light and goodness, before they dive together into what is deep below their feet. So Scarlett and George and Benji, our documentarian, go to recruit companions for the journey when Benji spots a white lady, or woman in white. This is a ghostly figure that shows up in stories all over the world, from Japan to the Netherlands and even Brazil. In France, dames blanches are pre-Christian goddesses who would lurk under bridges or at the entrances of caves. In one tale, a white lady will ask a young man to dance. If he agrees, she allows him to pass. But if he refuses the offer, she will then throw him off the bridge. This is no doubt an explanation for Benji's death, which occurs in a world where lore, myth, and the supernatural are real. When they enter the catacombs, there is an image of a skull eating a sun, foretelling George's entrance into the underworld despite his objections, as well as the foretelling of his death. Here's another illustration behind George when he then goes underground, showing a man lying down under a blanket that is made of the moon and stars. It's George, and Scarlett is keeping him safe. When the group is forced to cross through the path that's considered evil, that's when they've crossed over into the realm of the dead and the supernatural. This is the below, contrasted with the church tower that is the above. And it is here where the bells ring in reverse. Above, the bells ring loudly, causing a momentary silence to fall. In this mirrored underworld, however, the silence comes first. And if you listen closely, you can also hear the alarms from Scarlett's descent in Iran.
What was that?
The question is not what was that, but who was that?
The things that happen here originate from within these individuals. They're the ones with the power, and they don't realize it yet.
Vitriol. Why
The
vitriol?
motto of alchemy.
Vitriol?
Visita interiora terrae rectificando in venes occultum lapidem.
Oil of vitriol, known now as sulfuric acid, is likely the most important substance in alchemy because it dissolves everything except gold. In alchemical art, vitriol is a green lion who hunts and swallows the sun. This is foretelling George's death.
Brightest light in darkest day. Think about it.
Bracelet. Yeah. The sun.
Every morning, the sky goddess gave birth to the sun. And every evening, she'd swallow him back up.
More imagery here associated with the eating of the sun, which is both a reference to George as well as what the truth is. Shortly after Scarlett takes the stone, they come across the Seal of Solomon, which is from Kabbalistic tradition and originally described in the Zohar. This illustration, however, is from Levi's The History of Magic. In Kabbalistic symbolism, the representation of God is always by a duplicated image, one erect, the other reversed, one white and the other black. In such manner did the sages seek to express the intelligent and vulgar conceptions of the same idea, that of the god of light and the god of shadow. The interwovenness of these two figures shows that they are one, two opposites that become one. This brings us to the truth of the Philosopher's Stone. Jung says that the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. Throughout this journey, Scarlet has been wrestling with images of her father's death and her inability to save him. The Hanged Man represents the condition of one in the life of whom gravitation from above has replaced that from below. The presence of the Hanged Man means that the person is suspended between two realities. The origin of the Hanged Man comes from the story of the Norse god Odin, who hung himself from the world tree and sacrificed himself as he stared down into the well of Erd until the runes revealed themselves to him. In this way, the image of the Hanged Man represents the undertaking of a personal sacrifice, a personal crucifixion of sorts, in order to obtain great knowledge. And the goal of Hermetic study is the realization that the individual is no different from the divine, otherwise referred to as a gnosis, a second birth, the discovery of divine wisdom. Through the alchemical process, one wishes to liberate the god from the darkness of matter. It's a symbolic, transformative process that begins with the acknowledgement of one's own material state and moral failings, and ends with a rebirth and a better understanding of the self. As I've noted before in other videos, there's little difference between the alchemical process, the hero's journey, individuation, even the heroine's journey. All of these are cycles that generally reflect the life-death cycle and individual attempts to fit small experiences into the experience of all of humanity. As above, so below. As it happens for you, it happens for us all. As it occurs in the cosmos,
So are my cells, so are my atoms, so is God. Basically, as I believe the world to be, so it is.
and the best part of this story is not only that Scarlet discovers her own power, it's that she understands the power is love. Her fear of losing George and the image that won't leave her mind of him covered in blood manifests in a pool of blood, which she falls into. By being covered in this blood, she is like a newborn and experiences a rebirth. Through a kiss, an act of love, she revives George. The pair of opposites become one, a balance of duality. The sun and moon, mind and spirit, body and soul, masculine and feminine, reason and faith, death and rebirth, transcend beyond duality. At the center of the human paradox might seem to be faith versus science, but the actual struggle is divine versus die. No one can escape death, but to simply be alive is to be divine. Because each generation that is born stretches all of humanity out into eternity, collectively escaping death, collectively godlike and divine. And to care for each other, to enter into partnerships and friendships as we go through this short life, is multiplying that godlike power. Love motivates us and helps us to become the best versions of ourselves. That is the truth that is beyond duality. That is the truth of as above, so below.
So you simply want the truth.
Exactly. Yeah, I want the truth.